Welcome back. This is the third video, hopefully the last video I'm going to be creating for part 3 about directories. So let me exit out of disk part. Excuse me. So what I want to talk about now is a few other commands that affect files and directories. One of those is the copy command. Now we've already talked about the copy command with copying files, but there are some things you have to watch when you're using the copy command with directories. First off, you can't use the copy command to copy directories. So why am I talking about it? Well, there's a few things you need to watch for when you copy a file. And also I want to demonstrate how you can now that we know about the special directories dot and dot, what you can use those with in conjunction with relative path names to copy files to other locations and not simply just make a copy of a file where you're currently located at. Alright, so first off, talking a little bit more about copying directories, what I want to do is double check what I have here. And I've got a tester directory that I was playing with earlier. Not much here. So what I'm going to do is go into my documents folder directory. Let's see what I have here. So I have my test mark directory. So what I want to do is I want to show you what happens when you attempt to copy a directory. And I want to make sure I have a directory that contains files. And I prefer not a lot of files, but we'll see what we can find out here. So what I'm going to do is first we're going to demonstrate copying files into a directory. So let me copy my test files, .txt files, into test mark. Alright, so copy test. Or actually I could do all .text files using a wildcard. That would be easier. So I'm going to copy all the .txt files into the test mark directory. Now, I don't remember if when I was talking about using files in part 2, if I talked about this part. In case I did, I'm just going to repeat myself a little bit. That remember, if you want to copy files to a directory and the directory does not exist, it's going to copy the files using the new name. Now, to demonstrate this, I want to show you what will happen if I specify test mark 1, which does not exist. There's no test mark 1 directory. So I'm going to copy, I'm not sure how many files, at least 3 files to test mark 1. And I've only specified one receiving name. So first off, when you specify the copy command, you specify what you want to copy, and then the last name you give it is the name where it copies all the files to. So what happens when you specify more files than the last name? Well, let's see. We have Miller list text. Oh, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We actually have 6 files that it copied. No error message. It says 1 file copied. So what do we have now? So let's do dir. We have a new file called test mark 1. Let's look at what that file contains. More test mark 1. Well, it has a bunch. Why didn't it stop? Am I missing the name? Now let me scroll up. Oh, there's more. Okay. I was thinking it went by, but what it's showing is the very first line. So here's some information, here's some information, here's some more information, including a directory listing, and I'm going to press and keep going. So what it did is it created one new file that contains the information from all of the files that I specified. So since I used a wildcard, the wildcard copied 6 files and it copied everything into one file. So instead of getting 6 files copied into a directory called testmark1, it combined all the files into one large file. Now that can be handy if that's what you really want to do. But actually what I want to do is copy them all into a directory. So let me delete testmark1. Let's recall my copy. And now, since testmark1 does not exist, if you put a backslash at the end of the name that's supposed to contain all the files, that's specifically telling the command that those files should be copied as subfiles of the directory testmark1 because of the backslash. So let's see what happens now. It says cannot find the path specified. So nothing gets copied, and because the directory simply doesn't exist. So that can save you some problems. So if you want to double check that you are really copying the files into a directory, but you're not quite sure if the directory exists, you can use the backslash. And of course you could use the dir command excuse me, to double check. Sometimes when you're listing a whole bunch of files, you might miss something. You might be tired and you just simply miss the fact the directory you were looking for wasn't there. So this will always guarantee that it will look for a directory when you use the backslash. So let me continue with this. So I know there's a directory called testmark, but I'll use the backslash anyway to guarantee. So I want to actually copy the 6 files into a directory. So let me do this. So now it says 6 files copied, not just 1 file copied. So if you ever see that where you have multiple files that were copied, but it just says 1 file was copied, that means you copied everything into 1 file. And so that's why it reports just 1 file copied. All right, now I have a directory out here called test spacemark, and I'm going to go ahead and use that. And we can go ahead and use that even though it has a space in it. I just have to remember that I need double quotes. All right, so excuse me. So what we got going is I want to demonstrate what happens when you use the copy command to try to copy a directory to another spot. So let me specify I'm going to copy the testmark directory into test spacemark. All right. So if testmark were a file, this would be a valid command. But watch what happens. I copied 6 files. Okay, no problem. So let's do a directory listing of testmark. it doesn't contain the test mark directory. It contains all the files that were in the directory. So that may be what you want. You may want to get all the files from one directory into another directory, and this is one way to do it. But remember, you're not copying the directory, you're copying the files that are in the directory. So, now, I'm in the Documents directory. So, what happens if I actually simply want to copy all the txt files into some other directory? Well, and I want that directory to be in some other location. So let me do dir above the documents to see what kind of directories I have. And I really only have a test.xlsx directory. So first off, let's create a directory above where I'm currently located. So I want to create my test directory. Test files. So remember when we were talking about in video 2, when you don't specify the backslash, it doesn't think that it's at the root, which is normally what you can do with when you're specifying the drive letter, but you can also leave it off when you're using the dot and dot dot links to move around the directories. So now I should have a directory up there called test files, right? No, you don't. So where is my new directory? There it is. It's called dot dot test files. So that's not what I wanted. So no, when you're moving around, when you use the drive letter, yes, you can leave the slash off, but when you're working around with the directories and specifying directories, you still need to use the backslash. So the correct, let me recall that. So the correct way to create a directory above where you're currently located is to specify dot dot to indicate you want to put this in the parent directory, and you need to use a backslash. So let me do that. So that now should give us a new directory called test files, and there it is right here. Not dot dot test files, but test files. All right. So here's how you can use dot dot to copy all of your files. So we're still in the documents directory. If I copy asterisk.txt dot dot backslash test files, and again to make sure that I'm specifying everything correctly, because even though I know and showing this video, and even though you know test files exists, I could have made a typing mistake. So even though when you know the directory exists, it's a good idea to include that last slash just to save you from typing mistakes. So now when I do this, copy 6 files, if I use dot dot with the directory command, test files. So there we go. This is a directory of the test files directory, and there's my 6 files that got copied. All right. So I've pretty much, I think, beaten into copying. To get more info about the copy command, you can just type help copy, and there are several different switches. You can verify the copy using the /V switch. A and B, You don't really need anymore. That's a holdover. It will recognize if something's just a plain text file or if it's a binary file. Use short file names for 8.3. Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. You do have the /y and /-y, which I know I talked about earlier, for verifying and suppressing, or, I'm sorry, for either suppressing error messages or forcing scripts to make sure they display any error messages. All right. And at the very bottom, notice it talks about here using wildcards, or if I use a file 1, 2, and 3 format, where if I specify multiple file names, the very last name specified is going to be the file where everything goes into, or the directory name. All right, so you can do multiple files at one time. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the move command. So let me get dir here. All right, so unlike the copy command, you can use the move command to move directories to another directory. And it's just very simple. Just type the move command. I'll do test mark into test space mark. One directory moved. If I do dir now, I don't have test mark with no space. There's test mark. So if I do dir test mark, I now have all my 6 files, but I also have the directory test mark as well. Now, using dot and dot dot. Just like with copy, you can use the dot dot to move files around. So I can move test mark, and actually if I want to keep the same name, all I need to do is specify dot dot and it'll move it up there. When you need to use a name, you have to use the backslash. So this is correct also. All right. So this explicitly says I want the directory test space mark moved to my parent directory using the same name. Now you could use the move command to change the name when you move it. So I could get rid of that space and move it and rename the file at the same time. But when I do that, I have to remember this backslash. So there's 3 things that I've actually pointed out here. Is 1, you can just specify dot dot and that'll work just fine. It'll move the directory up to the parent directory, no problem. If I want to explicitly specify the name, or I want to rename the directory after it's moved, I need to include the backslash before I type in the new name. So let's see what we get. One directory moved. Let me do dir for the documents. It's not there anymore. But when I do dir dot dot, there's my directory. It now has the file name, the directory name of test mark without any spaces in it. So just like with files, you can use the move command to rename directories as well as files. So I could change the name, and I should, of this dot dot test files. So I'm going to move dot dot test files as just test files. Let's see, dir, and there's my directory test files without the dot dot in front of it. All right. Then just like with a copy command, you can do help move. And I did talk about move with the files, what the /y and /-y do. Just as a reminder, /y in both the copy and move suppresses prompting to confirm you really want to overwrite an existing file, because it asks you if you want to do that. And then the -y, oddly enough, forces prompting, but when I was talking about using files, you use this primarily when you have a move or a copy command inside a script to make sure any prompt gets passed from the script to the display so you can answer it. All right. Deleting directories. Well, you've got the del command for files, but you actually have a different command for directories. So for instance, if I say del test files, it's going to, interesting to point this out is it asks me, are you sure? Now, look what it's giving me though. It says documents test files asterisk. Are you sure? And I'll say yes. So, no messages. What do we have left? We have the test files directory. What ends up happening if you use the files delete command, del, it will attempt to delete all the files inside the directory. So let me demonstrate that. Excuse me. So let's copy all our txt files into the test files directory. And let's confirm they're there. And they're there. All right. So let's issue the del command again. And I'll say yes. Still nothing. So test files directory is there. No files. So if you're really going to delete the directory, that's not a big deal anyway. You wanted to get rid of the files. Excuse me. But I just wanted to point out what's going to happen. If you try to use the del command on a directory, you will get results you weren't expecting. So I want to fill up the test files directory again. So let me do that. All right, so I want to get those files back in there. The reason for that is I want to show what happens when a directory is not empty when you try to delete it. So the actual command for deleting a directory is on slide 20 in the PowerPoint. And it's either rd or rmdir. Either way, whatever you feel more comfortable with. So I'm going to do rmdir test files. I apologize, I'm trying to talk too fast here. So I've got the right command, I'm specifying the right directory name. The directory is not empty. So when you attempt to delete a directory that's not empty, it'll warn you and won't do anything. So what do? Well, there's a switch you can specify. It's the /s switch, as I talk about in the PowerPoint. So I'm going to type rd, save myself a little typing, /s test files. Are you sure? So yes, it's going to ask you if you're really sure about this. I'll just answer Y for yes. And still no confirmation. But now test files, the directory is completely gone. So now, what do if you know you really want to get rid of the directory? Well, you don't want to answer any questions, you've actually got to specify another switch. It's /q that I talk about in the PowerPoint. So let's set up our directory. I just did that on a fluke just to show you that copy will not automatically create a directory even if you specify the \. So we still have to create the directory. So let me create the directory and we'll copy the files. There we go. So to get rid of, and I'm going to type this in uppercase just to show you that it's a Q. The lowercase might be a little bit hard to read. So remove directory /q test files, and bam, the directory is not empty. So what do we do? Well, the problem is you have to specify both /s and /q. So let me recall the command /s. Now it's happy. dir, and the directory's gone. Now, one thing I didn't talk about yet, just like with deleting files, there is no way to retrieve a directory you've deleted by accident. Maybe you typed in the wrong name. Maybe you have several directories that have the same starting characters and you deleted the wrong one. You're out of luck. Again, just like with files, you'd have to purchase some software that would allow you to attempt to recover the files in that directory. So just like with files, there's no recycle bin where the directory gets stored. Okay, now, talked about using move to rename things. To rename directories, you use the exact same command as you would for files. So let me just use the .. directory. So I have that .testdir directory I've got in my parent directory. C users Mark Monica. So what I want to do is I just want to rename it. So I'll just rename .. /.testdir to just simply testdir. Alright, and when I do dir ... and just to show you, there is no testdir there already. Kind of feel like when I'm doing that, I'm saying nothing up my sleeves as I type in the commands here. Alright, so now I do have testdir. So notice again, let me recall the command. I didn't specify that I was changing the directory name. I didn't specify the new name with ... Once you specify the directory that you want to change, or a file name, for instance, you can just simply specify the new name and the correct file gets renamed. Alright, so, and the same holds true since I'm talking about it as files. So let me just show you with the file up there called myfiles.txt. I'll just simply call my new files.txt and dir ... and it's renamed my new files.txt. All right. Now, the next command I want to talk about is called the tree command. TREE. What you use that command for is to find out what the directory structure is of your hard drive. And you can use it from any working directory location to get info about any other working directory location. Or you can simply tell it to give you a directory structure of your current working directory and all the directories below where you currently are at. So the most simple version of this command is just simply typing in the command tree. And when you do that, it gives you a representation of all of the directories and all of the subdirectories underneath where you're currently at. So I've got my Access directory. There's no subdirectories. There's a custom office templates, no subdirectories. Notepad++ directory, and it shows the subdirectories underneath that. And as I scroll down, that's all the directories I have. Now notice, or you may not have noticed, it did not, I want to repeat that, did not show me the files that are in those directories and subdirectories. It only shows you the directories. Now, there is an option where you can get it to show you the files, and that's the /f switch. So if I say tree/f, it took a little longer to display. Now it will show you every single file in all of those subdirectories. And notice, because I didn't adjust the number of lines to save, that it went off the page. But you can use this to create a file that contains the directory structure. And just like with all the other commands, you can use .. notation. You can specify other directory drive letters if you want. So if I do tree B : it'll give me no subfolders on B. Well, that's probably because I formatted it for our last video. But if I do tree E : I should get quite a bit back. Well, not too much. The only thing on E is CST120 and PowerPoints in CST177. Why? Because I had already shown you there's other things on there. Remember, when I specify just a drive letter, it gives you the... I'm sorry, I'm tripping over my own tongue here. Remember, when you just specify the drive letter, the command works on the working directory specified on that particular drive. And the working directory on the E drive right now is CST120. So if I want to get a tree structure of the entire drive starting at the root, and I want to guarantee that it's going to start at the root, I have to remember that first \. So recalling the command, once I specify the \, I've now specified to start at the root directory, and now I get a bit more information. So I get my CST120 directory, CST134 directory, 133, and the other directory I created on there, 177. All right. So always remember that when you're specifying commands to work on other drives, that it's going to work on the working directory of that other drive, unless you explicitly give a full path name, or you simply say starting with the root directory by specifying the \ at the very that I show right here, where I have my cursor spinning at the top there. And I'm spinning it a lot since I don't have a way of highlighting things here, just to kind of show you. Now, one thing I want to point out here is these lines that are used to show you your directories. What those are actually are graphics characters. So they're not dashed lines or underscores. They're an actual graphics character. And although they show up really great on your display, if you need to save this to a file, they look terrible when you simply look at a text file. So let me show you by using the tree command and using redirection to create a tree list .txt file. So it's just going to create a directory structure of starting with my current working directory on the C drive and the subdirectories there. So it did that. So let me use more to show what this file looks like. Okay. Now it does still look pretty good. Well, I shouldn't say it looks perfect. But if you want to print this file, this isn't going to print out so good. So there's another switch, /A, which stands for ASCII. And what that does is that uses plus signs and dashes to create the same lines. So when I do this, this is what you get. Now it doesn't look quite as neat as it did before, but this will print off with no problem. Okay? Now you can combine the two switches. And by the way, remember our other redirection command, the pipe. So I don't have to create a text file. I can just pipe everything to the more command and let it display things one page at a time, so that I can page through it and look. Don't have to worry about it scrolling off the screen. Don't have to worry about having an extra file, and so on. And if I'm done looking at what I wanted to look, even though the command is kind of executed, the command tree command has done executing. So more is handling everything now. When you hit quit, you're all done. So those are the only switches you have for the tree command. If I do help tree, that's all it gives you. So tree's fairly simple, does one thing for you. When you're working on a computer that's not yours, this is a way in the command line to find out what's on the computer. Usually because you're not snooping, but usually because you want to find everything to back it up in case you need to do something detrimental to a user's files, like formatting the hard drive. All right. Now, last command finally is called xcopy. X-C-O-P-Y. All right. This is the command you use when you want to actually copy a directory someplace else. Back in the old days, this is how you would make backups of computers, and you can still use it to make a backup of a computer if you put this in a script and have the script run periodically. Gives you a bit more control than simply specifying the backup solution that comes with Windows. But the problem is it has a lot of switches. Help xcopy. So notice, this is one of those times help displays everything all at once. But here's your start of your help. There's a lot of different switches here. I don't list all of them in the PowerPoint, believe it or not. I just wanted to list some of the more common ones you would use. For instance, prompt before creating each destination file. Sometimes you want to double check that everything's getting created. You want to monitor how the xcopy program is running. The /s, you can use that to copy directories and subdirectories, but you can help clean up by not copying any empty ones. But there's also E, like maybe you want to preserve exactly how the directory structure looks even with any empty directories. And you would use the /E switch then. All right, /V, that's very popular. You want to verify the size of each file after it's done copying to make sure you've got everything. There is /W, prompt before it starts. So instead of being prompted for every destination file, you simply want it to wait before it actually starts cranking away on everything. /C, continue even if an error occurs. What ends up happening if some kind of error occurs, maybe it has trouble reading a file, maybe it has trouble writing a file, it'll stop doing everything else. So that will allow you to everything to continue, and then you can go back and you can look and see what the errors were, and then you can judge if that's a problem or not. The /C then allows the whole thing to continue, especially if you're copying hundreds of files. So you can get the whole thing done, and maybe there's only a couple of files it couldn't copy for whatever reason. And you can go back and try to figure out what the problem was there. Now there's also /L, display all the files that would be copied. So you could create a listing of all the files that you'd copied as just as a hard copy printout to verify what was copied. /H, not so much unless you're copying a system directory. It copies all the hidden and system files also. Usually that means it will copy any links, junctions that I pointed out earlier, or any settings files that are hidden and listed as, and have the system attribute. Those aren't a biggie. You can always recreate settings, but if you want to make sure you get everything and you verify that you're getting all the hidden and system files as well, then you specify the /H switch. Now, there's also where it will create a directory structure but not copy the files. Now, you would use that if you actually wanted to duplicate a directory structure, but you're going to put all new files in that directory, but you want to make sure you have the exact same parent directories and subdirectories. And you copy only files that already exist in the destination. This would be a backup where you want to update previously copied files, and you only have specific files that you wanted to copy in the first place. So you could use this, that it only copy files that it finds are already have been copied before. Excuse me. Taking a drink here. My throat's getting a little dry. /Y, suppress prompting to confirm you want to overwrite an existing destination file. Again, maybe you want to create a brand new backup. Even if the files already exist, you could specify that. Just do it so that it doesn't ask you. Then with the same thing with copy and move commands, you have -Y, which will always prompt you, no matter what, to overwrite an existing destination file. Again, just like with move and copy, if you use this command in a script file, you should include -Y if you want to be prompted about overwriting files to make sure the script passes along that question. All right. So, just as an example, let's say I want to copy, well, I don't want to, these are fairly big. I want to copy something to that drive on B, but it's not very big, so I want to make sure whatever I pick is okay. So let's create a new file here. And I'm going to copy my text files into it. Alright, so what I want to do is I'm going to use the xcopy command to to copy test files, and I want to verify that the files are okay. And just for the heck of it, I'm going to include the /w command so it asks me before I start. And I'm also going to display the file names. Alright, so actually what I need, okay, one of the other switches, one of the switches I misidentified, that was the /L switch. What I have in the PowerPoint is correct. I say in the PowerPoint displays files that would be copied. Alright, and I misidentified it when I was going through some of the switches. What it does is it never copies anything. If you specify the /L switch, it does not copy any of the files. It just simply shows you what will be copied. That way you can double check that you're actually copying the things you want to copy without doing anything. Alright. It will automatically display files that are copied, and there's the /Q switch, where if you don't want the file names displayed, then you have to specify /Q. But I'm going to let the file names display here. And what I'm going to do is I can specify the switches at the end of the command. What I don't remember is if I put it in between the files, the locations, if that'll cause a problem or not. So we'll just say B:, and again, I want to, this case, I want to make sure that the directory is going to get copied to the root of the B drive, even though that's not a problem now, or shouldn't be. That way I guarantee it's going to be copied into the root of the B drive and not in any working directory on the B drive. So now when I specify this, because of the /W switch, it asks me am I ready? So I just simply answer Y, and it goes. Now notice, unlike other prompts, it doesn't say yes or no. When you answer the prompt, you say yes and it goes immediately. You don't have to press enter. Or if I did not want to copy, I could type in N for no, and it would just simply stop. So it copied the files, and here it shows it copied test files, Miller test. So let's see what happens here. So now when I do dir B:, oops, I'm sorry, B:, /, it copied all the files. So what the heck happened? Well, even though you use xcopy to copy directories, and it's the only thing you can use to copy directories, you have to tell it you want to copy the directories. It's a bit of a pain, but the one switch I need to provide is either /S or /E. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide /S since there aren't any empty subdirectories. So I can, I can just go /S. So yes, copy directories and subdirectories. Press any key to continue. Overwrite B. Now remember, we didn't tell it to automatically overwrite anything. So it's going to prompt me for all 6 files. But notice the prompt. Overwrite B Miller list.txt. Why is it giving me that? Because it should not be trying to copy those. So let me say A for all to make sure everything gets copied. So if I do dir B:/, where's my directory? All right. Again, there's a bit of a gotcha with the xcopy command. you need to actually specify the directory you want to use with a backslash for good measure. So, an even better measure, let's specify that don't ask about copying anything. But it shouldn't, should it? Because I'm copying the directory. So let's see what happens. Bam. Oops. Wrong. dir test files directory. So, unlike the copy and the move command, when you use the xcopy command, you have to specify the directory name you want to use wherever you're copying anything. So, there are several gotchas that I demonstrated there for the xcopy command, but it is very powerful. And as long as you use it and you remember all the little gotchas, it works very well, as you could see. All right, so that's why on slide 25, in the PowerPoint, for the example, I put this, my example is copying the documents directory to the F drive, and notice I did put documents. So in fact, I wouldn't have had to use the backslash. It automatically created the documents directory because I specified creating the in this case, in this example, I specified the backslash to make sure it was going to create the test files directory, but the real reason that it created the test files directory is with this /s switch, because you need to specify the name of the directory that you want to create and the /s telling it you want it to create the directory. All right, so there's several things you need to remember. And I'm kind of, at this point, I'm kind of repeating myself, probably more than once. So that actually does get us to the end of part 3 for directories. So we are getting a little long. I think we're about 45 minutes in this movie now, or this video. So this is the end, last video for part 3 directories. So thanks for watching, and I hope this wasn't too confusing. Thanks.